Hi guys, we're just missing Heidi. Did we know about Heidi?
I was messaging her, and we are having trouble because we didn't have the link for the regular meeting. So I told her to send a new link.
Sent out that link.
Yeah. So I told her.
Okay, does anybody see the mayor?
Should be in the council chambers. He was there.
Yep, okay, and Heidi's up. Okay, Mayor, I think we're ready. Oh, I miss seeing everybody. Okay. That Dan with the shirt, I am home. Hi Heidi. Okay, I think, Chris, you can probably mute us while the mayor starts it.
It is 5:33 p.m. Excuse me, Monday, May 11th, 2020, and this is the May 11th edition of the Moorhead City Council meeting. Oh, thank you. Sorry, folks, didn't have my mic on. 5:33 p.m., May 11th. We're calling the meeting to order of the Moorhead City Council meeting. Madam Clerk, will you please provide a roll call?
In there, yes. Shelley Dahlquist.
Councilmember Dahlquist, are you available? For the record, I do see that her mute is off, but Heidi, Councilmember Durand is texting, or
Can
not
any of you
texting,
hear
but
anything?
she can't hear anything.
Oh, there we go. Okay, now we can hear Mayor.
Okay,
Shelley Dahlquist.
still can't hear Councilmember Dahlquist. Now, it looks like she's muted. Why don't we move on to others and we'll come back to her.
Sarah Watson Curry.
Here?
Shelley Carlson.
Here.
Heidi Durand.
Here.
Deb White.
Here.
Larry Seljevold.
Here.
Chuck Hendrickson.
Here.
Steve Lindos.
Here.
City staff John Shockley. And City Manager Chris Volkers.
Here.
And Mayor Jonathan Judd.
Here. And then do we want to try Councilmember Dahlquist again?
Shelley Dahlquist.
I'm here.
Great. Thank you, folks. And then we'll please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you, folks. Good evening, everyone. I am Mayor Jonathan Judd. The Moorhead City Council is holding its regularly scheduled meeting using virtual meeting technology under an emergency declaration due to COVID-19. I am in the City Council chambers along with the folks named, also with the city Assistant City Manager Dan Molly and a few other staff members. Council members are attending remotely. Any public comment received prior to this meeting will be read as a part of the record during the applicable agenda item. The public may participate during the meeting by calling 218-299-5001. Public input will be taken by a staff member and provided to me to read during the meeting. Or you may request that your call be bridged to the virtual WebEx meeting and speak directly during our public hearings or citizens addressing the council agenda item. Again, the public comment line is 218-299-5001. If there is not an answer, please leave your message or a callback number and someone will contact you as soon as possible. Thank you, everyone. And then we'll move to item number 3. Are there any amendments to the agenda, Madam City Manager or Council?
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to item number 4. Excuse me, the consent agenda. Are there any items that have been pulled off the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda at this time?
Linda moves approval.
Second, Carlson.
Got that, Madam City Clerk? Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam City Clerk?
Dahlquist, Watson Curry,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Durand,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Seljevold,
Yes.
Hendrickson,
Yes.
Lindos.
Yes.
Motion passes. Also move on to item number 5, the approval of the minutes. 5A, the approval of the minutes from the April 27th, 2020 meeting. Before we move forward on this, I think there was at least one other email that might have came in relationship to the item on the agenda relating to the action item with the Wilkin County matter, and I think there was a person that wanted to have that as a part of the minutes. So I would ask that if in consideration for that item, if that item can be added to the minutes.
Mayor, I'll move to approve the minutes with the addition of the email that we received.
Linda seconds.
Okay. So motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion on that item? Madam Clerk?
Watson Curry,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Durand,
Yes.
White, Seljevold,
Yes.
Hendrickson,
Yes.
Lindos,
Yes.
and Dahlquist.
Yes.
Motion carries. Number 6, citizens addressing the council. I will defer to Madam Clerk, Assistant City Manager Molly, City Manager Volkers, or any council members. Has anyone received any information relating to any citizens that wish to be heard this evening?
None at this time.
Okay. Then we'll
Mr.
move on-
Mayor?
I'm sorry, yes?
Chris Volker, City Manager. There was an email from a citizen under this to be heard asking, and the council saw the email about asking that the council know that she would like the issue of chickens to be brought up. And so that email did go to the entire council, so that would, we can attach it to the agenda. That would warrant, or that would, if City Attorney Shockley concurs, that would meet the need of her addressing the council, because that email was circulated and she asked that it be mentioned under citizens addressing the council.
Just so I can pull that up, when did that come in again, Madam City Manager? I know I've received it, I just don't remember when.
Friday, I believe.
Okay, I think you're right. Okay, I do vaguely remember that. Okay,
I'm sorry, I have it right here, Mr. Mayor.
no, that's fine. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Molly. Okay,
We sent, I tried to call before the meeting and
Okay.
sent a text to that number.
okay. Okay, just so, for the record, I am holding what Mr. Molly has received from the residents who wish to be heard regarding a potential ordinance change with the backyard chickens. Mr. Molly stated that he has attempted to reach out to the resident via electronic means and left a voicemail and a text, and there's been no response. Okay, so we'll just make a note, let the record reflect that we have received the email, council has received the email, and then is that sufficient, as you stated, Madam City Manager, just to make a record that we've got it? And the citizen can be heard? Okay, I'm gonna assume that that's okay, okay. Then we'll move on then to item number 9 on the agenda, which is a US 10, US 75 corridor study presentation. And I do believe that's Dr. Bob Zimmerman who will be speaking on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Yeah, just a brief introduction to this topic. MnDOT's program projects to reconstruct US 10 and 75 in 2025 and 2026. That includes segments of 8th Street, Main Avenue, as well as Center Avenue. So with reconstruction projects, there are some opportunities for some relatively significant changes along those corridors. With that, MnDOT requested that MetroCog complete a corridor study along those segments to guide final design for the projects. Some additional partners in the study included, obviously, the city, Downtown Moorhead, Inc., MatBus, and MSUM. But the purpose of the corridor study was to develop context-sensitive solutions for those corridors that balance the needs of MnDOT, the city, and area stakeholders. SRF completed the corridor study under a contract with MetroCog, and tonight Leif Garnis with SRF is joining us to walk you through the highlights of that corridor study. Following the presentation, the City Council will be asked to consider a resolution of support. And I would also note, in addition to the Leif, Michael Maddox with MetroCog is present. Justin Knopf with MnDOT is also on the line. And Christy Lashevsky played a key role in the study as well. So with that, I would turn it over to Leif.
All right, thanks, Bob, and thanks, Mr. Mayor and council members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, if we could start off here, just advancing the next slide. Thanks, Bob, for the introduction to the corridor study for US 10 and 75. looks like we're still pulling up the presentation here, is that correct? All right. All right, so as Bob mentioned, this corridor study is really looking at some opportunities that we see coming forward here with some changes on the Fargo side. Also knowing that MnDOT's looking to reconstruct these corridors in 2025 and 2026, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here later. But really, we wanted to just start off by saying, you know, this work really built on previous work that was done in 2013. MetroCog and the city worked through a corridor study on 12th Avenue on the south portion here, which was also adopted as part of the study. There's also lots of work ongoing with the city and MnDOT with 11th Street Underpass that was incorporated into the study as well. And one thing I'd like to mention here is that we see this project as having really three different unique areas. And so this study really framed the issues, the concepts, as well as the visions into three different focus areas. The first one being the downtown Moorhead area, the second one being US 75 South, and then also the third one, US 10 East. And as Bob mentioned, we appreciate all the partners that were part of this study. Next slide, please. Right, as Bob mentioned here, the overall vision, really we wanted to make sure that we were identifying context-sensitive solutions. So what that means is let's find solutions that fit the vision and how these corridors should be relative to not only technical information that was collected, but also information from the community. So with that in mind, our overarching goals here were to ultimately identify concepts and recommendations that really make sure that the roadways are designed such that they fit the use that they're intended to serve. We want to make sure that we are accommodating appropriate users. So if one focus area prioritizes walkers and bikers over vehicles, we want to make sure we account for that. We know there's lots of efforts with the city and Downtown Moorhead Inc. Redevelopment plans and development plans in downtown. So we want to make sure our recommendations address and help stimulate growth, and then also provide flexibility near and long term, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Also, really, feel or improve the gateway feel of the corridors, which is some input we did get back from the community working through this. All right, next slide, please. All right, so to complete this study, focusing on these three different focus groups, we essentially broke it up into three phases. Our first phase was really gathering input, determining what our needs are, and listening to the community. So a lot of data collection and speaking with the community was built into this first phase. Second phase is where we took that information, looked at our visions, and started developing concepts and evaluating them for each of the focus areas. Our last phase ultimately is pulling all of this together into a draft report and into a plan, as well as the information that we're presenting here tonight. And I should note that all of the information that's being presented tonight is available on MetroCog's website, which we'll display here towards the end of the presentation. And this information will be accepting comments from the community under the Contact Us tab until Thursday, May 21st at 4 p.m. One thing I would like to note here is that as we worked throughout this corridor study, we did look at several different opportunities to engage the community and other stakeholders, and we'll talk about that here next. Next slide, please. All right, one thing I did want to make sure I pointed out here is there's been a lot of history and a lot of studies that have influence decisions and concepts for the transportation system in downtown Moorhead over the past several years. And so we did want to highlight several pieces of this that have really fed into where we're at now, but also really a key point throughout the study and a challenge throughout the study is knowing that, from a traffic perspective, the data that we have today is really challenging to work with in a sense, given that there's been a lot of construction projects going on that have altered people's decisions in which way they go, not only in Moorhead, but also on the Fargo side. So all of these things really needed to be taken into account or considered as we looked at this study. And as I mentioned here, and as Bob mentioned, 2025, 2026 is the target timeframe for construction. So from here through the next several years here, the DOT will be working to essentially develop a project and develop preliminary and final construction plans for that and continue their engagement with the community. Next slide, please. I did want to just touch on a little bit of the public and stakeholder engagement that we essentially did throughout this corridor study. And with all of the strategies that we used and the opportunities that we presented to the community, we reached over 1,250 people. To do this, we did try to do several different venues or different opportunities, ranging from your traditional meet-in-person public meeting with a presentation to pop-up meetings, so essentially going out in the community and meeting people where they are and getting input from them there and directing them to where they can find more information online. We did spend some time sitting down with several focus groups. We talked to downtown business groups, we talked to residents, we talked to schools and universities. We also talked to fire and the police and EMS, State Patrol, and really wanted to get a broad range of input. One successful tool that was used here for the study was an online survey that was mirrored with a paper survey, but with this we were able to get a wide reach of people to respond, and interestingly enough, through that process we had over 730 written comments that we get to sort through for input that was provided. So quite great success on that. We'll talk about what we heard here a little bit further along and how that applied to each of our focus areas. Next slide, please. All right, starting with our first focus area, downtown Moorhead. This focus area is quite different than our other two focus areas. This is an area where we have many differing land uses, where we really look at the different comparison between office uses, commercial and residential uses, but also knowing that there's several high-density residential developments that are currently under construction. But more importantly, the city's goal to really make downtown a better place to socialize, work, shop, and live. Next slide, please. We did want to highlight a few pieces of information we did obtain from the public. As I mentioned, with our second survey in particular, we received a lot of information, and so we did want to just highlight a few key points from the community. A lot of discussion and feedback from the community about really trying to improve the downtown area and environment for pedestrians and bicyclists. People want to feel better and more comfortable in these areas. Also talked about some opportunities to beautify or utilize some pavement, such as the dead-end spaces, where the previous quiet zone was implemented, using that for park spaces or benches or parking and so forth. Also looking at opportunities to really address any of the at-grade crossing issues with the trains, and see if we can include improvements to help with that. But really, again, just focusing on these improvements that really help slow people down if speed's an issue, improve where pedestrians can cross and where bikers can bike. Next slide, please. One thing while we're changing slides here, I will note is that this was also an area where there was a lot of emphasis placed on really taking advantage of opportunities to consider the future of Main Avenue, in particular in Fargo, or excuse me, in Moorhead, knowing what the changes taking place on the Fargo side and what and how that might influence downtown in the future with traffic. So when we talk about the downtown focus area, bringing all this together as far as the vision, this vision for the downtown focus area really prioritizes design elements in the roadway that focus on improving it for pedestrians and bicyclists, and again, taking advantage of opportunities presented by lower traffic volumes in the future with other larger improvements. We did want to just highlight a few things here in this table. I know it's a lot of information to read here. It's in your packet, but really wanted to hone in on that. Downtown area is focused on commercial, residential, and businesses. In order for that to thrive, we want to make sure that we are accommodating those users that will be using those, such as pedestrians and bicyclists. We also know that transit's a big key to the corridors, and so making sure that we're accommodating transit users. One important thing to note here is that the future route change of Highway 10 and 75 in the future, when that gets changed, either with or before any potential underpass at 11th Street, that is also another opportunity where traffic volumes could be altered or rerouted through downtown. And so another opportunity we wanted to consider as part of the downtown environment. Next slide, please. All right, so this table you'll see in your packet and through this presentation here that there's a table just like this for each of the focus areas. And ultimately, the column on the left with the letters is what we've identified as the key components or key concepts to this focus area. The middle column talks about how these concepts address our goals, and then the columns on the right really just provide a quick visual for how does that concept address the needs that were identified as part of the study, focusing on pavement conditions, which was a big need for the DOT in wanting to reconstruct its roadways, safety and mobility at intersections and along the corridors. Also, again, walkability and bikeability. A few key things I wanted to highlight here for the downtown focus area. This is ultimately items A and B. The vision, the way it is set up, as far as wanting to promote the environment for walkers and bikers and stimulate economic growth. The study team looked at two different roadway options for Main Avenue. So I'm essentially taking away a lane or reducing a lane in each direction on Main Avenue from the river to 8th, and essentially using that as an opportunity to provide on-street parking, to narrow up the crossing for pedestrians, and really promote more of that walking and biking environment. The other concept that is being considered is essentially reconstructing it as is, with the opportunity to potentially narrow up the lanes if we can to increase the sidewalk width and provide more streetscaping opportunities. That'll have to be fleshed out throughout the final design when we get into details with potential property impacts. But ultimately, when we look at the concept, the 3-lane versus the 5-lane, relative to traffic levels, we're right at the border of whether or not, from a planning level, if a 3-lane is appropriate versus a 5-lane. And so knowing that traffic volumes will adjust and reroute here in the future as a result of other construction projects nearby, we want to make sure that this is an option that is continue to be carried forward as the locally preferred concept for Main Avenue. A few other pieces to note, up on Center Avenue with a future jurisdiction in 11th Street underpass, we do expect traffic to be reduced on Center Avenue as well, such that we could continue the 3-lane roadway that the city is moving forward with west of 8th and continue that east over to 11th. We also, as I mentioned, talked about minimizing lane width for along roadways, and that's something that will have to be evaluated throughout the design as a trade-off between trucks and their usage, as well as safety, as well as what it means for travel speed. A couple locations we looked at providing an additional pedestrian crossing, and that's at 7th Street. It's a little bit simpler to do when the roadway is a 3-lane roadway. However, with a 5-lane roadway, there is still some risk for pedestrians to cross there, but ultimately, as downtown redevelops and more residential opportunities are provided, we want to make sure if there's demand there that we provide a safe crossing for pedestrians. 5th Street, just south of Main Avenue to 2nd, we recommend converting that to a 2-way street from a 1-way street. And then again, we talked earlier about dynamic signing and what we can do to help alert drivers if trains are coming and giving them an opportunity to choose an alternate route if they're essentially traveling through downtown. And then lastly, utilizing any remnant space that's available for any public uses, and that's something that will be continued as part of downtown redevelopment plans. So the next several slides here for downtown focus area are graphics illustrating what this would look like. The first one is focusing on this next slide here is focusing on the west end of essentially the study area from the river to 6th Street. And when you're comparing the graphic side by side with the tables, the letters line up with the corridor itself to give a little bit more of a description on what we're proposing here. But essentially, this is an example of what a 3-lane roadway would look like, where we are reducing the travel lanes in each direction by a lane, giving that space for on-street parking, as well as increasing the width for sidewalks. At intersections, there's opportunities to provide bump outs to reduce the width for crossing widths for pedestrians, which reduces their risk. The next slide essentially is carrying this same 3-lane concept from 6th to 8th Street. One thing to point out is that with all of the work that's in study ongoing right now with funding opportunities, environmental documentation for an underpass or grade separation, that all of that will be supplemented into this study as that is finalized once that project can be defined and move forward in the environmental stage. With this graphic as well, moving north on 8th Street, essentially reconstructing the corridor similar to as it is today, although looking for opportunities to narrow the lanes if possible and giving more space to pedestrians and walkers in this area. We did look at narrowing this stretch, but with the short spacing between Main and Center and the railroad tracks, it did become a challenge and a safety concern. All right, the next slide here is the same portion of the corridor where we are essentially looking at replacing it as is today. And I would note that we're calling this an alternate concept. Through our engagement and through input from our stakeholders, the 3-lane concept was identified as the locally preferred for the study, knowing that we do need to, as this project moves forward, collect additional traffic data to understand, are we truly getting a reduction that we are thinking we're going to see? Or is traffic rerouting like we think it's going to reroute? And so therefore, if we can do that comparison once traffic stabilizes here in a couple years after some projects are completed, we'll be able to make a final decision on that concept. The next slide here, again, is the last portion to the east from 6th to 8th. One item I'd point out here for 7th Street, there was some feedback from the community that they would like to see a crossing. Now that intersection is not signalized today, it is a C intersection. And with the 3-lane, I should have pointed out on the graphic, but essentially when we have 1 lane in each direction, we really narrow up the distance that pedestrians would need to cross. We'd also bump out the curbs on each side. In this case, one way to treat this crossing would be to have a raised median where pedestrians could cross one direction of traffic and then stage themselves in the median for their opportunity to cross the second set of travel lanes. This is a crossing that will continue to be evaluated and considered if the demand is there for the crossing in the future. And then the last graphic slide for downtown is next here, and this focuses on center. So again, carrying the 3-lane work that the city has done on the west side of 8th along Center Avenue over to 11th Street. And again, providing opportunities for on-street parking, providing increased widths for the sidewalks, and really shortening up the crossing distance for pedestrians. All right, next focus area, please, on the next slide. All right, our next focus area is US 75 South, so 8th Street south of downtown. This is where we really transition from the businesses and the commercial areas on the northern end into more of the residential areas. This is really a mix between low and medium density residential, as well as with the education institutions. And really, one thing I did want to point out is that feedback from the community notes that this is really a historical area, or has a historic feel to it with the street trees, and so we did want to ensure that we minimize any potential impacts to those. Next slide, please. All right, just a few things I'd like to highlight here from the community that we heard. On US 75 South, we had a lot of feedback that this corridor really feels like a highway. And whatever we can do to help improve that feel is something that the community would promote. There was lots of questions about multi-use paths along 8th Street, so along both sides. We do have some connections on the southern end. And then ultimately, with the 12th Avenue corridor study and some recommendations with that, connections could tie into those trails to head east or west. But ultimately, if paths weren't feasible along 8th Street, if we could find some other corridors where we could accommodate pedestrians and bicyclists. But also there were a few safety concerns that were identified looking at historical data, in particular on the northern end between 4th Avenue and Main Avenue. Also, we did get some feedback from the community as far as the jog on the corridor, and people were talking about that's confusing, and especially in the wintertime. The paint gets worn off, so it's hard to see, and so if there's an opportunity to reconstruct, they would like to see us address that jog. One other thing to keep in mind here is that 2nd Avenue, that was identified as a high pedestrian crossing location. East-west, people crossing over 8th Street, going between the businesses and using transit in the area. Next slide, please. The vision for our southern US 55 or 75 focus area really prioritizes maintaining the existing historical character with the large street trees in making sure that we keep the neighborhood feel that it is today. There's several homes along the corridor that have access to 8th Street, so we want to make sure that we account for that. So ultimately, roadway elements that we looked at here were focused on, again, on improving the area for pedestrians and bicyclists. One thing we didn't want to talk about as far as the vision is that there was an emphasis placed on trying to minimize any impacts to the businesses, particularly on the north end, knowing that we do have a safety issue we need to consider addressing. Also, this is a main connection right now as it stands from downtown to I-94, and making sure that we do maintain it as a corridor for commuters. That said, there were locations where we'd like to improve the crossing for pedestrians and bicyclists, as well as look at opportunities to improve the trails on both sides. As far as development goes, this was an area identified, it's rather developed, and there wasn't a lot of opportunity or a lot of opportunities identified for future redevelopment, and so economic growth here was a lower priority. But again, working down our list here, addressing traffic and safety concerns was something else we wanted to consider, and then again, maintaining that historic feel. Next slide, please. So the first component of the 75 South focus area is ultimately reconstructing the entire corridor. For pavement conditions, this is a high area of need for pavement rehab. I don't think that comes to a surprise to anyone. A lot of feedback from the community of, when we asked for opportunities to make changes, they said, let's just fix the potholes that we have. So that's what we're intending to do here with reconstruction of the corridor. If there's opportunities to minimize lane width to give extra space to pedestrians, that is considered. Now, we did also look at adding a trail on both sides, essentially the whole way. What we did find and what we asked the community through our engagement process was if we did that, we would impact several trees, we would impact some private properties, we would impact underground utilities. Is that something that the public is on board with? And the answer was no. So we did consider additional off 8th Street routes, such as 4th and 5th or 11th. And then with this, these would be able to be tied into the future trail that was proposed with the 12th Avenue study. We also looked at several different options to restrict access at 2nd Avenue, so the intersection just south of Main. This was an intersection that had safety issues that were identified through crash patterns. But also knowing that this was an area for high pedestrian activity, we looked at combining an access restriction with a raised median island for pedestrians to cross. With the access restriction, we do expect additional traffic to shift down to 4th Avenue. So what we expect is near term, a traffic signal would be warranted at 4th Avenue with the additional traffic, and also that would provide another signalized crossing for pedestrians. Our concepts look at minimizing the jog along the corridor, and then again, adopting the recommendations from the 12th Avenue corridor study. Next, please. While the slide is switching, I will talk about 12th Avenue. So looking at revising the intersection geometry, adjusting the signal timing, including a leading pedestrian interval for pedestrians. So essentially giving pedestrians a little time to start walking before traffic hits the green light. And then also looking at limiting right turn on reds at the light at 12th Avenue. So the last pieces of the US 75 South focus area, we did look at a couple different options for intersection control at 20th on the southern end to see if traffic signal control is still the long-term solution there. We did consider a roundabout and some other options and determined that reinstalling a traffic signal there is the most appropriate solution moving forward. We did determine that the 10th Avenue pedestrian crossing today is still a high demand crossing and that we want to consider reinstalling some sort of enhanced pedestrian feature. The type would want to be determined here as this project gets closer to fruition. And then again, construct bike facilities that are offline of 8. So in this case, there is an opportunity utilizing the frontage road between 20th and 24th, and then this would allow for essentially connection of the trails from 12th all the way across 94. And then the project on the southern end ties into the work that was done at 24th Avenue. So next slide, please. These are just 3 graphics illustrating the difference, or what's included in the concepts, locally preferred concepts for US 75 South. This first graphic here is on the southern end. Again, I just mentioned talking about making a connection using the frontage road. There's plenty of width available for a bicycle facility along that corridor to tie into the connections, again, all the way from 24th up to 12th. Reinstalling the signal at 20th Avenue, and then essentially reconstructing the corridor all the way up to 12th Avenue on the next slide. This slide covers essentially 14th all the way up to 7th. So signalized crossings at 12th Avenue for pedestrians, along with the geometric improvements that were identified in the 12th Avenue study. Reinstalling some sort of enhanced pedestrian crossing treatment at 10th Avenue, and then reinstalling a traffic signal at 7th. Next slide, please. This slide is the last section of our south focus area, where we look at 7th all the way up to Main. The ideas here were, again, to remove the jog along the roadway, and then look at some access restrictions at 2nd Avenue. So at 2nd Avenue, traffic that is trying to cross 8th Street on 2nd Avenue would no longer be allowed to do that. They'd only be able to make right turns. And then if you're on 8th Street, you'd be able to make a left turn to head west on 2nd, but in the southbound direction, we would be disallowing the left turn to 2nd. We understand that it does pose challenges for some users and for some businesses, but this was a location that did have some crash history that was at the point that we needed to consider some restrictions. All right, next slide, please. All right, we'll jump into our last focus area here, which is the US 10 East. This area is vastly different than the downtown areas and the US 75 South area. A lot more industrial and commercial type uses, but also knowing that there is a lot of opportunities here for redevelopment as time goes on. One thing that was interesting to note about this corridor is you're leaving downtown and heading east towards Dilworth. It starts out as more of a downtown feel, and then it opens up to a big highway, and then back down to more of an urban section. There are some trails that aren't provided through this area that we wanted to consider, and then also there were a couple safety and corridor, intersection and safety corridor safety issues that we wanted to address, along with some traffic operational issues. Next slide, please. Like our last couple focus areas, this next slide just highlights a few key components or pieces of information obtained from our engagement with the public. The first one being this highway feel wanting to remove the wide median that's confusing, particularly at the 1075 intersection itself, and really tying together the roadways between downtown and Dilworth. With that, the community did see the need or did provide some advice to us as far as limiting certain movements at some intersections, which goes along with proper access management. It's interesting that this stretch of the corridor and this focus area doesn't necessarily experience a lot of pedestrians and bicyclists today, but and people recognize that, but the feedback we were getting is that there is a desire to use that, and the reason why we're not seeing it is because people don't feel safe doing that. So with that, we did want to look at opportunities for, could we provide an underpass for pedestrians under US 10 and US 75? And then lastly, the wide median today at US 10 and 75 intersection does have a vehicle inspection site in the median, and State Patrol had indicated to us that it was their preference to maintain that if the opportunity exists, but also they were open to considering other options if there were some available. Next slide, please. So just framing up the vision here for the US 10 East focus area. Again, providing a roadway that fits the land use. We really wanted to do what we could to connect the urban character between downtown Moorhead and Dilworth. But also, again, this is a mobility corridor, so we wanted to make sure we weren't negatively impacting commuters. But also, there was a desire for enhanced crossings for pedestrians and bicyclists. Next slide, please. All right, so the elements of this concept for US 10 East really focus on, again, reconstructing the entire corridor, narrowing up the median, and removing the wide median that exists, providing paths along both the north and south side between essentially the 21st Street, 1st Avenue intersection and 28th Street, where connections exist today. Also, one key component that was considered as part of this study is connecting the pedestrian and bicycle environment to downtown. We did consider looking at keeping a path along Center Avenue all the way underneath the railroad bridge, but with the railroad bridge as it exists today, it does pose a little bit of a challenge. So there have been previous studies that have identified the shared use path along First Avenue, so that's where we would connect into the network into downtown. At the intersection of First Avenue and 21st Street, we do have some opportunities there to reconstruct that intersection, try to reduce the skew that exists on the north side of the leg, and adjust some signal planning there to reduce people's wait times. One of the other bigger changes here is that the 10 and 75 intersection, we're proposing here a continuous green T intersection. Ultimately, with the narrow median, this gives us an opportunity to implement this treatment, which really is not a lot different than what's out there today, other than the traffic coming from the north on 75 and making a left turn to head east will have an inside acceleration lane that they can use, and so traffic heading from the west to east, so from Moorhead to Dilworth, would not have to stop going through this intersection. And then lastly, what we're proposing as part of this concept is maintaining full access at 28th Street and at 32nd Street. So essentially, there'd be full access intersections at 75, 28th, 32nd, and 34th. The last pieces of this focus area really look at tying in some frontage road connections if possible, and then addressing some safety needs on 34th Street just south of Highway 10. Next slide, please. This last slide for US 10 East ultimately lays out the overall concept as a starting point for final design. What you'll see here again is trail connections, potential opportunity for an underpass at 21st or 1st or somewhere in the vicinity, the green T at Highway 10 and 75, and then some access management along the corridor all the way to 34th Street, maintaining full access at 28th and 32nd. All right, next slide, please. As we mentioned in our introduction, MnDOT has a plan and a program where funding is identified for projects, and US 10 and 75 are included in those projects in both years 2025 and 2026. Phase 1 essentially is the US 75 south focus area, as well as some elements of the downtown focus area. And then phase 2 is the last focus area we just talked about, which is US 10 East. Next slide, please. These last two slides just provide a little more information about the different phases. This first one being phase 1. This is an area of need for pavement rehabilitation, so it was prioritized over the phase 2 construction areas. Also knowing that with 11th Street work downtown and potential opportunities there, we want to make sure that we're minimizing impacts to residents during construction as much as possible. Next slide, please. And then this slide just covers the highlighted blue phase here, phase 2, lower priority from a pavement rehabilitation standpoint, although there is a need. And again, trying to minimize any construction and staging coordination needs if possible. Next slide, please. I certainly appreciate your time allowing me to present on the work that's been done here for US 10 and 75. There's a lot more to come here as the DOT moves forward with developing the project here the next several years. As I mentioned in the introduction here, this information is available on the website for you to view and learn more about the project, as well as provide some feedback. And again, the opportunity to provide feedback will be available until Thursday, May 21st at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Covered a lot of information, but very, very important for the future of our city. So thank you. Really good to hear that we have the parties that we need invested in this project, MnDOT, MetroCog, SRF, and also with our city staff. So grateful to have you present that. With the presentation, do we have any questions or comments from council regarding the information that was presented? Checking, I don't see any hands raised. So I think with that, any comments from city staff? regarding this project? Or the presentation, rather? Okay, hearing none. 9A, there is a resolution of support for the US 10, US 75 corridor study. I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution of support.
Dundas moves support.
Watson Curry will second.
I'm gonna let the Madam City Clerk to figure that one out.
I'm going to go off the camera. Steve Lindos,
Yes.
Chuck Hendrickson,
Yes.
Larry Selgevold,
Yes.
Deb White,
Yes.
Heidi Durand,
Yes.
Shelley Carlson,
Yes.
Sarah Watson Curry,
Yes.
Shelley Dahlquist.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Again, thank you, everyone, for the presentation tonight and for appearing at tonight's meeting. Thank you. Okay, folks, we'll move on to item number 15 on the agenda, which is a resolution to approve donation acceptance policy. Madam City Manager, is this your item?
It is, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So it's been a long time since we've noticed that we did not have a proper donation policy. We knew we had to follow Minnesota statutes, which says that the council must approve donations received by the city. So we've known that, we bring it to you every once in a while, but we haven't had a comprehensive policy. We thought it was time to do that. So while it is a city operations policy, I am asking for council resolution and support, because one of the items that the executive leadership team came up with and is asking for is that anything $1,000 or less that the city manager have the authority to just accept. So we don't need to bring it every time. We do often get small donations. We've received several, like $100 donations for the veterans or military banners. For example, we just the other day, somebody donated $50 for something else. We get these miscellaneous donations. We always flag them for what they are for. Our community is very generous. It does add up, but to come to you would be an administrative nightmare every single time. So I'm asking for authority for anything $1,000 or less, city manager approval, and then I will bring anything beyond that to you, and that also gives you a chance to recognize the donors. We haven't had an official way of doing that before, so we wanted to make sure we did that. For example, we had a bank donate a special washing machine to the fire department lately, and you didn't know about it. I didn't know till later. It's something we should celebrate and recognize, so we want to get this policy in place. So that's what I'm asking for today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam City Manager. Makes sense. Are there any questions from council regarding the policy as written in our agenda packets?
This is Councilmember Carlson. I don't know if you saw my hand raised, Mr. Mayor.
I didn't, sorry.
I'm just wondering if perhaps it shouldn't say city manager or designee, considering that maybe some of the executive leadership team, the heads of the departments might be able to accept a $50 donation or a $100 donation or something similar to free up a little bit of the city manager's time. I'm just wondering if maybe we could add some wording similar to that.
So, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Carlson, for all policies per the charter, the city manager does delegate appropriately, but the charter says the city manager shall. So policies need to say the city manager shall. And then I have the ability in our operational world to designate accordingly. So that the policy should say what it says. And Mr. Shockley can correct me, but I'm pretty sure that's how we always do it, and the reason for. And the delegation comes in our internal operational processes.
Mr. Shockley?
I don't have anything to add.
I'm looking, are there any other questions on the policy?
Mayor, my hand is also raised. It's Shelley Dahlquist.
Sorry, you know what, before you go on, can we have IT now? There we go. Sorry, the piece to allow me to see your hands wasn't working. Now I see them. So my apologies to Councilmember Dahlquist and Councilmember Seljevold. So now that it's working, we'll go Councilmember Dahlquist and then Councilmember Seljevold.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just concerned that perhaps there would be a second to sign off on the city manager just for insurance for her own protection. And so perhaps like Carla McCall would actually, double check and sign off on it. That was just my concern, that to protect everyone, so there's always a second person that would be checking off on it. Thank you.
Well, okay, I'll give Madam City Manager a chance to respond to your comment or question, and we'll go to Councilmember Seljevold first so she can address both. Councilmember Seljevold?
Yes, you've mentioned like the military banners. In a way, aren't those already pre-approved? I mean, in a sense, we've already said it's okay to buy those. So, and there must be certain other things that we have that, in the sense, we've already pre-approved them that we wouldn't have to. You know what I'm saying? Like a park bench. I think we have a catalog out there, a park bench, military banners. Those, in a sense, to me, they've already been pre-approved. So I'm just wondering how many times you get items that really have to go by us because we don't know about.
Madam City Manager, before you respond, I think City Attorney Shockley wants to address Councilmember Seljevold's comment. Mr. City Attorney.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I can address both council questions. I'll take the later first. This is in respect to donations that are given, not to expenditures. So with respect to expenditures like park benches and flags, yes, the council has approved that in the budget. This is just giving the city manager the authority to accept a donation. Under state statute, technically, all donations, like if somebody wants to donate $100 for a flower pot or sidewalk art, things like that, it's technically supposed to come back to the city council to accept it. We chose $1,000 because we just thought that we didn't want to, clutter up the agenda with small donations, give the city manager that authority just to accept those donations. With respect to the second person signing off on it, it's a donation, it's not an expenditure, and all donations, usually when a gift comes through, the city manager is always asking us myself to review to make sure it doesn't violate the anti-gift policy and state statute, which prohibits gifts that are given to the city elected officials or appointed officials by quote-unquote interested parties, which are contractors, which are people that are performing work for the city. So there is already built into the system that second check to make sure the donation doesn't violate the state law with respect to anti-gift. And I don't know if the city manager has anything else to add.
Madam City Manager and Councilmember Hendrickson, I do see your hand up. We'll give Madam City Manager a chance to respond. And if there's any follow-up based on that, then we'll move on to you. Madam City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't. Mr. Shockley, I couldn't have said it better, so thank you.
Does that provide any follow-up questions, Councilman? Thanks, bud. All good, no worries. All good.
I'm the secretary.
Thank you, sir. Are we back live?
Hear you.
Are we, hold on one moment, folks. We're just making sure we're back live again. I can see everybody. We'll get to you, Councilmember Hendrickson. I just want to make sure we're back to recording and we're live again.
Hey, Chris. My YouTube one is just spinning. Is that okay? You're okay. Thank you.
All right, folks, we had a brief recess, unexpected, but we're back, and I think we're live and recording. So Councilmember Hendrickson, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if you answered this earlier, City Manager Volkers, but where'd you come, is it a state law, $1,000, or is that something you came up with? And what is the frequency of those donations?
Councilmember Hendrickson, Council, that is something ELT came up with, that dollar threshold, that we get a lot of smaller ones, anything over that we should absolutely bring and recognize it. And I certainly can provide a list, and I would suggest that I be required to do that, maybe once a year of all the smaller donations, so the council at least sees it. So that might be a good thing in the spirit of, but no, that's not in the statute. It's only, it's a number that we thought was the right number based on the donations we received.
And you with the ELT, you thought that was a good number?
We did, but
So
we
you
can,
didn't-
it doesn't matter to me. It's up to you guys.
Okay. No, it's fine with me. I'm just wondering the frequency, if you had to come to us quite a bit, or, if it was the right dollar amount.
I get several. I mean, I write handwritten thank you notes to everybody who donates to the city. So there are, a couple a month, probably more than that, maybe 5 a month on average. That would be less than that. Not that many over, so that's what I would bring to the council.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, folks, any other questions or comments regarding the acceptance policy as written? Okay. Oh, wait, Councilmember Dahlquist, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It would be nice to see a list of the donations so that we could thank them also. It's just nice to know and to be appreciated for donating. So that if there is a list, that would be great just for us to see. Thank you.
That's a great idea. We'll add that. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. Any further questions or comments? Then, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved, Councilmember Carlson.
Second, Shelley Dahlquist.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Madam City Clerk?
Watson Curry,
Yes.
Durand,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Dahlquist, White,
Yes.
Seljevold,
Yes.
Hendrickson,
Yes.
Lindos.
Yes.
Motion passes. And then I see we pretty much have talked about item number 16. Is there a motion to approve that resolution as well?
Move to approve White.
Dahlquist, second.
Any further discussion? Madam City Clerk?
Lindos,
Yes.
Hendrickson,
Yes.
Seljevold,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Durand,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Watson Curry,
Yes.
Dahlquist.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to item number 17, Mayor and Council reports. Are there any members of council that wish to make any reports at this time? Looking for hands. I see Councilmember Lindas. You're up.
Thank you, Mayor Judd. So I had a ability to meet with people interested in community gardenings on Monday. Assistant City Manager and Dan Molly also was there, and essentially just reminding residents that we actually have the ability to do, boulevard public gardens in Moorhead. There's a permitting process along with pollinator gardens and natural lawn plantings, and as well as vegetable gardens. The community gardens is something that city is doing to try to encourage or find ways that they can help existing kind of nonprofits and institutions. And so this group that was meeting was essentially the Moorhead Public Housing Garden and the Presbyterian Garden just south of the I-94. And these are managed gardens. There's going to be an opportunity for people to come and help expand those opportunities, both garden and also help contribute kind of volunteer work. The city, it turns out, can help support this because we have an abundance of compost and they needed more compost. So I think it's a win-win situation, and it's a great way to promote resiliency of food issues, but also kind of the community of practices where you get to know neighbors and stuff. So it's a great opportunity.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindas. Any other comments or questions for Councilmember Lindas? And thank you for bringing that up. It's important. Councilmember Watson Curry, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A little bit to piggyback off of the food resilience. I am on the Health and Wellness Resiliency Task Force group, and we did meet last week, and food, parks, and mental health were all top issues that came up, and so there's certainly a role that we can play in keeping our residents healthy and active. So more to come on that in specific actions, but we did meet, and it feels like it was historical enough to report that the Oakport Joint Powers Committee met last Friday to approve construction at 3712 Highway 75 North. We had not met since 2018. So it was kind of interesting when we come together and, and move through some things there. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Councilmember Watson Curry. Just for the folks at home to know, we have a council and we have individuals on the council that have taken a very active approach to addressing food resilience and food security. So I do applaud the folks for doing that and making that a priority. It is a big issue in our region, especially as we're going and dealing with the COVID-19. So thank you for your efforts on that. Do we have any other council members that wish to provide any reports at this time? I'm seeing no hands. Okay. I'll be brief in my remarks. I want to piggyback on both Councilmember Lindas and Councilmember Watson Curry regarding the food resilience and security issues. Ruby's Pantry will be back operational on Tuesday, May 26th, 2020. Location to be determined. I do want to send a special shout out to City Manager Volkers and her staff, and also Pastor Michelle Weber, First Congregational UCC, for trying to work through finding out a location. Stay tuned on that. I do know that there was a hiatus this last month, but if anyone is interested in helping, there will be, I think when the location is determined, there will be obviously social distancing measures that will be in place. She will be looking for 30 individuals to help volunteer. So I guess be on the lookout for that through a variety of city and community resources. Also, kudos to council members and staff, and maybe City Manager Volkers will have this in her report regarding the downtown master plan kickoff for Phase 3. Thank you for attending and sharing your insights about the vision and the future of the downtown through this master plan. Also, shout out to DMI, Derek LaPointe, as well, and other partners that were involved in that, Moorhead Business Association as well. Other than that, the only two things I'll add, there have been COVID-19 regional updates every Monday morning. Welcome into partnerships with Sanford and Essentia to give us updates on what's going on from the health care situation in the region regarding COVID-19. Also, shout outs to Kathy McKay from Clay County Public Health for her involvement, getting us the information that we need from St. Paul to disseminate here locally. Also, there is, for folks to be aware, the COVID-19 Red River Valley Task Force that is primarily a North Dakota, Cass County effort. However, the state of Minnesota is working in partnership through Clay County to make sure that as we do have different things going on regarding our regulations on this side of the river, and then Cass County working with Bismarck through their opening up process, that we're all a part of the plan to make sure that people in our congregate care facilities as well as our long-term care facilities are being taken care of. So there have been a number of phone calls and meetings that I've been engaged in while this task force is being set up. So a big thank you again to Kathy McKay from Clay County, Minnesota Department of Health, as well as our North Dakota partners for making sure that we are part of that conversation and sharing information and making sure that you all, as the residents, get that information as needed. So with that, I don't have any other reports unless we do have anyone else from council that wishes to speak up. Seeing no hands, I will pass it over to Madam City Manager Christina Volkers.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for noting the downtown plan. That was really a good meeting with the Moorhead EDA and Downtown Moorhead Inc., like you mentioned, and the council, so that was great. The next thing to come out of that, I just want to highlight, will be an RFP for the Woodlawn Point site. So we are working on that. That's a big deal. That'll be the next big thing. And besides that, I do not have any further report this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Manager. Which now will lead us to, and just for one more thing before we go on to the executive session, is it appropriate at this time, Mr. City Attorney, if we don't have any new business or any citizens addressing the council, do I have to come back out and adjourn the meeting after the executive session?
Yep, this session will continue. It'll be like any other city council meeting where the public will just see the meeting going on.
Yep.
But once we're done with the executive session, Mr. Mayor, you'll need to come back here and just adjourn this meeting.
Just want to make sure that I'm following protocol under the new COVID-19. So with that, we'll move on to number 19, which is an executive session. 19A, excuse me, close executive session pursuant to Minnesota statute section 13B.05, subdivision 3, paren C, paren 3, for the purpose of developing offers or counter, I believe that's should be offers, for the sale of real property described as Clay County parcel number 58.900.2101, having an abbreviated legal description of PT SE4 SE4 BEG 377.88 degrees west of South SE Southeast Corridor West, 653.32 degrees north, 1334.84 feet east, 652.11 degrees, I believe, and south 1334.61 to BEG, Section 21, Township 139, Range 048, and that was a mouthful. So with that, is there a motion to move into executive session?
So moved, that boy.
Second, Chuck.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Madam City Clerk.
Watson Curry,
Yes.
Dahlquist,
Yes.
Durand,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Seljevold,
Yes.
Hendrickson,
Yes.
Lindos.
Yep.
We are now in executive session. Thank you, folks. adjourned. Let me know when I can go. We're good? Okay. All right, I believe the executive session is now complete. There's no new business, no citizens to address the council. Madam City Clerk. Assistant City Manager Molly. Good. And we will adjourn the meeting, 7:27 PM, May 11th. Good night, Moorhead.